When The Quarry was about to release, I took an in-depth look at its localization, trying to answer the question, how do you translate a joke? The result was, in a variety of interesting ways, unless it's German, in which case a joke isn't attempted because Germany doesn't have comedy. Now I'm back to take another look at localization, but it's not a joke this time. It's an insult. Take a look at this.
And that's all the sheriff said to you? Okay, Tom?
Well, that ain't quite how he put it. What he actually said was, okay, Lumpkin.
Lumpkin?
Yeah, Lumpkin. Been calling me that ever since some business back in '54 when I saw one of them UFOs. Turned out to be a blimp gone towards mooring. Easy mistake to make, right?
Sure.
But that's when he started with the Lumpkin. A long time I never even knew what it meant. Till one of them nice people in the library looked it up for me. You got any idea what it means?
I can take a guess.
Lumpkin is an idiot!
I thought the term lumpkin was weird when I saw it written down on a document in Game Informer's video of the demo. RIP Game Informer. It was weird, but it was strange by design, it turns out, as it was an obscure reference being used to taunt Tom. And as we can see, it's not just Sheriff Cusick that uses it. His niche taunt has caught on and spread to all the other bullies in town. And it is an obscure insult, make no mistake. It means dullard or buffoon, and it originates in the late 18th century, in reference to the character Tony Lumpkin in the play She Stoops to Conquer by Oliver Goldsmith. It was a popular enough play that Lumpkin became a synonym for the kind of dummy that the Tony character embodied, just as people use Scrooge to describe any miserly person. So the question becomes, how does one go about localizing this kind of an insult? It has to both call Tom an idiot, but also be obscure enough that he wouldn't be able to identify it right away, hence the lines about someone from the library looking it up for him. So, which team did the best job of finding their own language and culture's version of the word lumpkin? Also, it's worth mentioning, some of the languages translated the lumpkin in the speech and the lumpkin on the page differently, which is an honest mistake, but it robs the nickname of the extra cruel dimension that everyone else in town also uses it to describe Tom. We'll start with Japan.
まあ、実際はちょっと違う。あいつはこう言ったんだよ。わかった、ランプキンって。
ランプキン？
ランプキンだ。
As you can see, they didn't bother localizing the word at all. It's a defensible point. After all, why localize this to a Japanese cultural reference when the game isn't set in Japan? But it's still a disappointment that they didn't put the work in. Next, we've got French.
Ben, il a pas dit tout à fait comme ça. En fait, il a dit « Ok, Nicodème. »
Nicodème.
Ouais, Nicodème.
This word, Nicodème, is a French version of Nicodemus, a Pharisee from the Bible who learns about Jesus' wisdom and becomes a secret disciple. It's used ironically as an insult in much the same way as you'd call a dim person Einstein, pointing out their idiocy by calling them the name of a wise person. So it's a pretty good recreation of the original intent of the line. And it's also something you'd have to look up to understand the importance of, so it's a good translation in both respects. Here's the Italian version.
Beh, non ha detto proprio così. Più precisamente ha detto ok, mammalucco.
Mammalucco?
Sì, mammalucco.
This is a pretty basic way to call someone an idiot. The twist is, it's the specific way you'd call a child an idiot, so the extra layer of infantilization adds extra cruelty to it, especially since the file also calls him that, establishing the name has gotten around. The only way this doesn't fit the bill is it's not the kind of thing you wouldn't have heard of, or would need someone at the library to look up for you. You'd know you were being called an idiot right away. Let's check out the Latin American Spanish translation.
Bien, la verdad es que no. Ok, lo que él me dijo fue... Muy bien, Tardo.
¿Tardo?
Che, Tardo.
Much like the Italian version, this is a pretty basic way of calling someone slow or a dullard. It's not something Tom could miss and need to have looked up. Here's the German version.
Also, nicht wortwörtlich. Naja, eigentlich sagte er, okay, Teufel.
Teufel?
Ja, Teufel.
This seems to be a character name again. It's capitalized, so it must be a proper noun, but unfortunately I haven't been able to figure out what character it's referring to. Even the German speaker I consulted on this wasn't familiar with it as an insult, so it's either fantastically obscure, just as the assignment requires, or just a questionable choice. Any Germans care to weigh in on this? This is the subtitled Thai scene.
Well, that ain't quite how he put it. What he actually said was, okay, Lumpkin.
Lumpkin?
Yeah, Lumpkin.
And it's also where automatic translators start to break down, because Google tells me this just means idiot, which is absolutely not something you'd have to ask a librarian to look up. Hopefully there's a subtlety I'm missing here, but I'd need a Thai speaker to help me out. Then we get to Chinese, which the internet, as usual, completely lets me down on.
大概但不准确。其实他说的意思是，好吧，吃线。
吃线？
对，吃线。
I get alternatively told that this means either idiot or crazy line. So there's definitely a reference here that I'm just not getting. The Spanish version is a little easier to parse.
Bueno, lo dijo de otra manera. En realidad lo que dijo fue... Vale, garrulo.
¿Garrulo?
Sí, garrulo.
Garrulo translates as someone who loves to chat about nonsense, which makes sense given the story about him seeing a UFO 10 years earlier. One of the possible translations suggested it could also refer to a hick or a hayseed, which fits, although none of them seem obscure enough to be worth going to the library over. The Korean one is just weird.
Well, that ain't quite how he put it. What he actually said was, okay, Lumpkin.
Lumpkin?
Yeah, Lumpkin.
Apparently this nickname translates directly as 7 pennies. The implication being that Tom is 7/10 as smart as a normal person. Super cruel, and yes, it also made it into the file, so the sheriff has been spreading that name around. I can't find any information about how obscure it is, though, so I'd need a Korean speaker to tell me if this fits the bill exactly. Here's the Polish one.
What he actually said was, okay, Lumpkin.
Lumpkin?
Yeah, Lumpkin.
And this is where all the translators I use just tapped out, not even attempting to get me a translation of the word. Interestingly, the file features an extended version of that word, as if the first was just an informal contraction, which could explain why it was so hard to translate. But then they translate the extended word as guy. So disappointed. The Turkish one, by comparison, is thankfully straightforward.
What he actually said was, okay, Lumpkin.
Lumpkin?
Yeah, Lumpkin.
This is just a straight-up blockhead, numbskull, dipstick, dummy. It's a very basic insult that you wouldn't have to look up in a library. I briefly thought it might have been another Nicodemus-type situation, because there was a Byzantine emperor in the 12th century named Theodore Mangafas. But it turns out that I had it backwards. He's just called Mangafas because he was so bad at everything that the Turks referred to him as Theodore the Fool so frequently that it eventually just became his Greek title. Finally, we have the best translation I've found amongst all of them. The Russian version.
Дословно он сказал так. Ладно, фалалей. Фалалей? Да, фалалей.
Here the word is philele, and it fits all of the criteria exactly. Not only is it an obscure and no longer used word for dummy, just as with Lumpkin, it finds its origin in literature. So Lumpkin was the pretty but empty-headed socialite from She Stoops to Conquer, and philele is the pretty but dumb manservant from Dostoevsky's The Village of Stepanchikovo. The Russian localizers could literally not have done a better job of capturing all of the nuance of the insult that was featured in the original English. The only complaint I have is that the word philele wasn't included in the schedule document. It's replaced by goon, which suggests that the sheriff's wittily cruel nickname hasn't spread in the Russian version. So that's how they've translated Lumpkin across all of the available languages in the game. Some didn't try at all. I'm looking at you, Japan. Most simply found a synonym for dumb to make the insult clear, and a couple actually went the distance, finding the right insult to match the situation and explain Tom's frustration. As always, localization is a fascinatingly complex endeavor. That's it for now. I'll be back soon with my demo breakdown video, and perhaps a little more translation fun as we count the days before Frank Stone is released. This is where I'd normally put the sign-off with an encouragement to check out my game, but I don't have any of the art or music I use on my vacation computer, so I'll just say like, subscribe, and come back here for more Frank Stone videos. But until then, au revoir.